October 5th will mark the 60th anniversary of the James Bond franchise. As an avid fan of the series, I have decided to commemorate that date by reviewing all of the films from my least favourite to my most favourite. Please be warned, these reviews will involve spoilers. Also, I will be including the 1967 James Bond spoof Casino Royale and the unofficial 1983 Bond film Never Say Never Again in my rankings. Goldfinger is the third official James Bond film. It is also the film that put James Bond on the map. From the Golden Girl to the Aston Martin, Goldfinger features the iconic moments that have imprinted themselves onto our collective psyches. With that in mind, however, is Goldfinger as special as we remember it? Perhaps it would be pertinent to begin with Goldfinger's plot. In the film, James Bond must prevent Auric Goldfinger from detonating an atomic bomb provided by Red China in the gold depository at Fort Knox. It is a brilliant story, masterfully woven by Ian Fleming, Richard Maybaum, and Paul Den. Goldfinger's plot is revealed piecemeal, thus giving the audience the opportunity to work out the scheme for themselves. By Goldfinger, it is clear that the tone of the films had shifted from realistic spy thrillers to fantasy. There had been elements of fantasy in Dr. No, but with Goldfinger, it is turned way up. The Aston Martin DB5, Goldfinger's scheme, and the object of desire, gold, are all larger than life. The Aston Martin DB5, dubbed the most famous car in the world, is the equivalent of a modern mythical chariot. Auric Goldfinger's scheme is inspired. Gold, the object the film is centered around, has connotations of wealth and power. Even the gadgets are perfectly balanced. There aren't too many, and the film has the good sense to take the gadgets away from Bond as the film progresses. The first problem I have, however, with Goldfinger is that its pace seems to slow down once James Bond has been captured. As a kid, I found Goldfinger to be a very slow and dull film due to the excessive amount of time Bond spends in captivity. My opinion has since changed. However, I do still find this to be a problem. Goldfinger arguably features Sean Connery's best performance as James Bond. Connery had been rather serious in Dr. No and From Russia with Love, especially Dr. No. However, by Goldfinger, Connery had eased into a more laid-back demeanour. Take, for example, when Bond is tailing Goldfinger through Switzerland. That scene could have been treated in a very serious manner. Instead, it is depicted as though Bond is going on a Sunday afternoon drive. There is even a moment when Bond, resisting the urge to chase after a beautiful woman in a sports car, says,
"Discipline 007. Discipline."
Auric Goldfinger is perhaps the best villain in the Bond series, though he's not my personal favourite. He is a charismatic, larger-than-life character who embodies the very idea of avarice. Goldfinger is like the spoilt child, willing to lash out with vindictiveness against anyone who refuses to give him everything he wants the moment he demands it. What makes Goldfinger even better as a villain is the dynamic he has with James Bond. Goldfinger changes the hero-villain dynamic by having James Bond start on top and Goldfinger in the lesser position, whereas most films start with the villain on top and the hero in the lesser position. The 5 Bond girls in Goldfinger are something of a mixed bag for me. It is clearly obvious that the filmmakers were going for quantity over quality. As a result, Bonita, Dink, Jill and Tilly are all physically attractive, but they are not particularly well developed. Pussy Galore is far better developed, and her relationship with Bond is given more time to grow. But personally, I don't find Honor Blackman to be particularly attractive. Oddjob is an iconic henchman, but I find him to be a bit too cartoonish for my tastes. I prefer Red Granton from Russia with Love. Goldfinger's version of Felix Leiter leaves a lot to be desired. He's more of a benevolent uncle than James Bond's confidant. In fact, none of the Americans in the film are particularly well cast. There is a workmanlike quality to this film. As I have mentioned before, I find that there is a kind of cheapness to Guy Hamilton's Bond films. One simply doesn't get the sense of glamour that one would normally get in, say, a Terence Young Bond film. However, unlike Diamonds Are Forever and The Man with the Golden Gun, that cheapness seems to suit the film. The direction and the cinematography allow the audience to project themselves into the movie, thus making the suspension of disbelief easier. Goldfinger also has to be credited for its superb editing, remarkable sets, and iconic music. So, is Goldfinger as great as everyone remembers? Well, no. It's certainly a good James Bond film, filled with a plethora of iconic moments, but it also has a number of problems that places it outside of my top 10. There are issues with the pacing of the film. The Bond girls leave a lot to be desired, though they are certainly beautiful, and one can see the early signs of the more outlandish Bond films beginning to emerge. That said, Goldfinger is a good James Bond movie, with lots about it that one can enjoy. My favourite moment in Goldfinger is the pre-title sequence, a perfect 5-minute snapshot into the world of James Bond. My least favourite moment is the murder of Mr. Solo. We don't really need to see Oddjob shoot Mr. Solo and then have the car crushed. It's a waste of time.